Welcome to the Save Our Venues podcast. I will be chatting to people working in venues across the country to get an insight into the current situation and ways we can help them. In today's podcast, I'll be chatting with Harkirit, who's the venue manager and a promoter for the Crescent in York.
My name's Harkirit. I'm a manager and one of the promoters at the Crescent community venue, which is based here in lovely York. We're a 250 cap venue, kind of program across a lot of different stuff. So everything from folk to jazz, indie, kind of post-punk, as well as like comedy, electronic music as well.
Yeah.
So drum and bass, grime, techno, house, disco, anything really. And like a lot of venues, we kind of balance as well between more kind of national touring bands, supporting kind of the local scene, and then everything like, you know, occasionally we'll have local theatres do a play or,
nice.
We used to be a working men's club and we still retain a lot of those activities as well.
Yeah.
So, on the Mondays we'd have like the old men come in and play dominoes, and sometimes there'll be a gig on in the back room, and then on a Tuesday or a Wednesday we have like line dancing classes, book clubs, all sorts really. A real kind of, like most venues, really kind of a variety of events that reflect the community that use it,
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
I think a lot of people would compare us to the Brood now.
I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah, we're, similar story there of like a working men's club that was kind of now transformed into a much more kind of vibrant community space, I mean, even prior to this, I was really interested in that idea of, traditionally a working men's club. I mean, it's in the name.
Yeah.
That it's kind of for a certain part of the community, and what can be gained from kind of opening it up to more parts of the community is been really interesting. I think there's so many as well in York, there was a point where there was a working men's club on almost every road. For economic reasons, the audience the customers getting older and changes in habits, so often like your dad would take you to a certain club and that would go through the generation, or it was attached to a certain industry or certain part of the trade or manufacturing that was here. And obviously these things have all kind of dissipated, but we're actually left with these like beautiful rooms that actually make for amazing venues. And, that's what Nathan's kind of worked on over there, and he's done an amazing job of it. It's what we're trying to do here, is to say, don't be so quick to like sell up your working men's club to become luxury flats or whatever. You can breathe in another bit of life if you kind of open the doors to the creative community a bit.
Yeah, because I was going to say, it sounds very, very like Brood now. I don't know if they do line dancing at Brood now, but...
no, I'm not sure if he does line dancing.
That's pretty cool.
We work really closely with Nathan as well. He's, I think, to some extent, on some occasions, almost like a mentor for us.
Yeah,
so.
It's a really good venue to go off, to be honest, because it's pretty iconic.
Yeah.
All over the UK, never mind just the north. So when did you guys open?
October will be 5 years. So we kind of opened in the wake of another venue in York shutting down. There was a couple of venues in York that shut down around that time. And so obviously there was a kind of group of promoters across different genres who were interested in finding a space and trying to find a way of making another space work. And really, I guess the kind of project was born out of that.
Yeah.
And obviously, I don't know if you know Fibbers at all, was quite a famous venue in York.
Yeah.
That shut down towards the end of last year, basically because the site had been bought by developers. So one thing we're really interested in kind of talking about as we emerge from this crisis is about the ownership of spaces. I'm doing some work for the Music Venue Trust at the moment as one of their coordinators.
Yeah.
And, we're blessed to own the space we operate in here. That's not to say we don't feel under threat by the current situation, not being able to make money, not being able to put shows on. But like the venues at the moment that have rents to pay, that have landlords that are looking at the moment thinking, how much of a break do I want to give these guys? Is this property going to be worth more money to me if it was made into luxury flats or a hotel? And the answer, unfortunately, almost always is yes. So
it's sad,
the
isn't it?
venues that we speak to at the moment who are owning the spaces they operate in, are definitely in a much better situation. They have a degree of security that others don't have in this situation. So I think we really need to look at like how these spaces are run and operated, and dare to think big about how we want to kind of shape the industry coming out of it.
Definitely. So you say you're involved with Music Venue Trust.
Yeah.
What kind of stuff are you doing with them?
Yeah, so I guess as we entered into lockdown, I think MVT wanted to do something which they'd been planning on doing anyway, but I think this kind of gave them the fresh impetus and opportunity to demonstrate towards, the people who are funding these positions, like why this was necessary. So like a team of regional coordinators. So I'm working in the Northeast, kind of everywhere between Newcastle and Leeds is my patch.
Yeah.
Then there's another coordinator for the Northeast, Chris Sherrington, who kind of does like West Yorkshire, York and Hull and so on. And then, there's a Scotland coordinator and so on and so forth. So you can kind of respond a bit more easily towards the local or regional needs, or like where there's been regional schemes set up. So for example, the Mayor of London announced pots of money for London venues, similar different schemes in Manchester and Liverpool. So being able to network together venues, check in on how they've been getting on, have they been able to access grants, helping them with any applications, like, a lot of people try to put together Arts Council applications, that sort of thing. But then also just really collating the information as a sector as to how does social distancing impact the work we do, what would a social distancing gig look like? Is it feasible? How much money do we lose operating under this model versus staying closed? And that's really about being able to then present that to the government of Department of Culture, Media, Sport, HRC, and saying, this is what our sector needs at the moment.
Yeah, it's so important, and it's really nice to kind of hear that everybody's coming together. I mean, this is half the point of the podcast, is to kind of give the venue owners and people working in the venue like a platform to just say, this is how it is. It's hard. Hello, we're here. Like, we're not going away. And
yeah, but I guess it's been interesting because there's so many venues that I see maybe on like the band who are coming to play, like on the tour poster, and I'm like, man, we've got really similar tastes. We're booking the same stuff. We're cropping up on the same poster. And now you kind of actually have the opportunity to speak to them. And it makes me hopeful that we can kind of develop more, and, we want to kind of maintain these networks as we come out of this. Yeah. And not just within our part of the industry, like venues talking to each other, but having conversations with agents, with managers, with artists, with the big, industry players, the foundations and whatever.
That's it.
And having a kind of level of conversation where we're talking not just about how to get ourselves out of the current crisis we're in, but recognising we were pretty much in crisis before this anyway.
Yeah,
and
true,
so like, how do we fix the systemic issues that are wrong with the industry? Use this as an opportunity to kind of restructure in a way that benefits everyone a bit more fairly.
Definitely. I think the communication is, I mean, I can't speak from experience, but the communication's probably not been there in the past, and it's really important that everyone kind of works together and understands it from other people's point of view as well.
Totally.
Yeah. What's the York music scene like?
Yeah, it's really, it's good. It's interesting. There's a lot of really exciting new stuff coming out. I'm really excited about some young bands that we've been trying to foster here. Perspex, really good kind of young post-punk band.
Nice.
There's a really great kind of label recording studio called Young Thugs, who have been putting together kind of high quality videos of a lot of the scene. Yeah, I think it's a beautiful place, York, because it's kind of small enough that we all know each other.
Yeah.
And that, you often, there's a lot of kind of cross-pollination between bands and influences. And it's a kind of beautiful thing when you're in a city that's big enough to have a creative scene, but not so big that you're kind of drowning in it. So everyone's very supportive of each other's projects and so on. And kind of supportive of the spaces that are putting on those projects as well. The real kind of DIY community place, there's never an assumption in York that if you just wait for something to happen, it will happen. People are very motivated to do stuff themselves, whether that's finding a space to go rehearse in or finding a space to go record in, or putting together like their own gig because, you know, a band they know that they met on tours wanting to come over to the UK, and you know, we're able to kind of facilitate them doing that rather than just doing it ourselves. That kind of stuff, I think, is just kind of integral to any scene, really. That kind of DIY nature, it's what is at the germination of any music scene, isn't it?
Totally. I mean, Leeds has a massive DIY scene, and
yeah,
it's the same thing, really. Like, Leeds is a little bit bigger than York, but everyone kind of knows everybody in the scene, and you can support each other through it, can't you? Give each other tips on how to do things, and yeah, I need to get to York to some gigs when all this
once all the madness is finished,
stuff is like calmed down, and I'm gonna get out and see many more cities, venues, and that. Especially doing this, it's like it's definitely opened my eyes to.
I think like moments like this, they cause this level of self-reflection. Before, like, oh, I'm gonna do this. Suddenly, everyone is fighting for their survival. You realise that, like, you know, maybe that was the last time I might have been able to go see that band or go see that venue or go see that, you know, theatre, play, whatever it is that's currently under threat. You kind of makes you reflect, like, man, I took it for granted when I had the opportunity to just go and do it.
That's it, yeah.
Suddenly it's taken away from you and you're like, oh.
Yeah. So how has the lockdown affected the Crescent as a venue?
Well, I mean, like most venues, I guess, was facing similar challenges. I think, and again, this is interesting to explore this. Like, obviously, it's not the actual putting on gigs that threatens us. It's the lack of beer sales, and that's suddenly really interesting. Like, in this moment, let's just suddenly stop and realise that every venue is actually held up by beer sales. Not by the actual activity of what we're doing, not by the box office, not by the tickets and so on. Just a point that I think everyone should be reflecting on, whether we even want that to be the case. You know?
It's true.
How do we value culture? How do we fund culture? I think that's really interesting discussion.
Yeah.
But obviously, without the ability to put on gigs and sell beer at those gigs, we're making like no money. So in the meantime, we've been trying to figure out like what else we can do to get some money in to pay the bills. Obviously, we've been crowdfunding as part of the Save Our Venues campaign. This close to hitting our target.
Okay, well, this might push it. You might have it by that.
Yeah, I'm like 500 quid away from 15 grand target.
There you go.
To head to our crowdfund page on our website, thecrescentyork.com. Just maybe nudge us over. But I don't know how well that's going to look. Initially, we budgeted like to kind of be like the end of June because we were like, we're saying 3 months, and we were like convinced. It might have been naive of us to assume that the government would announce more money for our sector or for people who couldn't like open straight away alongside other parts of the economy. But we're still kind of hoping for that and campaigning for that alongside Music Venue Trust and kind of other parts of the industry. Other than that, what have we been doing? We've been making like merch, so T-shirts.
Nice.
And I've been working on a zine kind of with tracks in from local artists and kind of bits in there about self-care and just kind of different things from different parts of the community that we reflect. And I think one thing that we're trying to do with all of that is like keep it very local. So like the T-shirts that we're making, they're printed here locally in York. There's kind of a cut going to designer, but also to other good causes here in York. Yeah. So we're really kind of interested in trying to develop the local economy, say like the York pound. Yeah. How can we keep every pound that you spend on a T-shirt from the Crescent, how can we keep as much of that pound as possible in the York economy? Because I think that's going to be really important going forward, is in terms of developing resilience, in terms of supporting like the ecology of creative community around a place like a venue is so important. So trying to think of ways like that generate money. So have a look at our shop on our website as well.
Nice. I will link that as well. There you go. No, that's a really good point that you made, is to kind of support the businesses that are closer to you. Feeds the like, local economy, and it keeps all the things that you love still around. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I guess it's not just about like the consumer buying local, but about the business that is putting out that product. Like how much of the cost of putting the product together is then spent locally as well. So it's really trying to like deepen that impact of the local spend. I think that's going to be super important because, you know, as culture as a whole, whether we're like theatre, music, you know, artists, we need to like start thinking about how we become more resilient, because whether we're like propped up by alcohol or we're propped up by funding, clearly we're not resilient, because look at the mess we're in. And I think we have to get used to, whether it's corona or whether it's cat flu or whatever the hell comes next, we're going to have to get used to this idea of like, we might have to shut down with little to no like beer income or whatever at like not much notice. Yeah. So we have to develop these new ways of working. I think it's really important.
Because I guess this has just brought it to the forefront. It was always there. It was always kind of a rocky kind of industry, but it was it's never been brought forward.
Rivers, you know, that they shut down before corona. In a way, like as venue owners, we're kind of used to talking about the crisis that the industry is facing, to be honest. You know, like I'd spent the 6 months prior to corona going along to the council, trying to convince them to support our York music venue network that we were starting up, because the venues in York were in crisis. Yeah. So we're kind of used to talking about this, but it's like maybe even for the first time now, it's more that people are listening, to be honest.
That's it.
You know, we're asking for many of the same things as an industry that we were asking before, in terms of grassroots music venues, talking about ownership of venues, talking about proper funding it, talking about, you know, ring fencing tax on tickets in order to properly support the grassroots. These were things that were proposed before. The difference now is that every single one of the venues are under threat, not just a third or whatever. Yeah. I think also the dramatic nature of everyone shutting and having no customers, this moment of collective pause for everyone has just highlighted all these structural issues with the industry that in a way that wasn't happening before, because we were just getting by, you know?
That's it. So going on from your point of, you know, things need to change, what do you think that the future has in store for like live music and especially independent venues? It's a pretty massive question, I'm sorry, but
I do think that, like, putting aside the kind of rose-tinted view, putting aside the possibility of us finding a vaccine for tomorrow, I mean, even if we do, I think it's almost irrelevant, because like I said, you know, next time like cat flu or bat flu or squirrel flu or whatever comes along, I think the governments are quite understandably going to be more wanting to like lock down or it goes out of control. We're going to have to start thinking about ways of changing the way we operate. We're going to have to start thinking about diversification. I've been thinking a lot about what I can do with my space in the daytime, whether that's expanding our kind of offer for community groups, whether it's putting on shows for retired people, or you know, or renting it out as a yoga studio. I think we're going to have to all think about that a little bit harder. I think we're going to have to think about how we structure deals that we make with bands and agents. I think it's going to have to share the risk much more equitably. People are going to have to accept that certain aspects of venue hire might cost more, or that certain guarantees might be lower than what they were used to previously. Because if we don't share risk equitably, we're an ecosystem. We can't operate without each other. So in the same way that the wealth has to be spread equitably throughout that, the risk has to as well. Because essentially, promoting a show is just like a really high stakes form of gambling often. Like,
that is so true. That is so true.
But when it comes down to like, you know, the offer you make or whatever, there's a lot of gut work in there. There's a lot of guess, you know, and you're kind of banking on maybe it not raining or another show not being announced. So, we're going to have to look at all that, I think, and really try and think about how we can change the way we work in those ways. I think as well for the music industry, I think these moments of like examining, again, it's like things we were already talking about. How much does streaming pay in royalties? You know, how much does PRS charge for venues? Suddenly these conversations actually feel like more productive. But it's not really because we're having different conversations. It's that we're having them, we feel more comfortable to have them openly. Because the Overton window, the window of what's politically possible or what's acceptable to talk about is shifted massively now. Whether it's like in our industry or in society as a whole.
It's true, yeah. I feel like 2020 has become this year of hopefully mass change is going to happen because of it. Yeah. But it has just been a bit of a mad one, isn't it? So obviously the government guidelines are pubs and stuff can open this weekend.
Yeah.
What are your plans for reopening?
So obviously we can't do shows, so that kind of puts a big limit on what we can do once we're open. We have a kind of like front bar area, like a lot of venues, like a separate bar area that we could open just as a pub. I think there's more considerations than a lot of people are like thinking about with that. Once I start opening, I have a feeling that all of the bills and utilities and mortgage that we've managed to renegotiate on the basis of being closed are going to come back to full whack. And if all we can sell is like a few pints here and there, I don't think we're going to be able to make enough to meet those.
That's it.
Certainly the survey that the Music Venue Trust did recently found that the average music venue is cheaper to stay closed at this point than open to any sort of form of social distancing.
Right, yeah.
And there's a kind of couple of different factors there. One is, like I said, like the bills going up and whatever, back to normal rate. Yeah. The other is cost of restocking and so on. And then refitting your venue to like be suitable for those purposes. And then just the kind of capacity aspect. But like, you know, we have people come here just to like hang out here and play pool, and some regulars, community who just use it regardless of what the event is going on. Nowhere near enough to pay the bills.
That's the thing, yeah.
Okay, as well, that I think pretty much all of the, again, in the survey that kind of led to that open letter, you know, that figure that MVT are asking for, 50 million, wasn't plucked from thin air. It's actually 46 million, but that's the combined cost of keeping all our venues shut for another 3 months in like hibernate mode, right? Yeah. Yeah. Now let's just reflect on a second that for 12 million, the government just wasted on the NHS app that turned out to be useful. The cost of HS2 is 100 million, so you could fund us for 6 months for, you know, for the cost of increasing kind of rail speed between London and Birmingham by 20 minutes.
Don't even get me started on that.
You know, or Trident, or any of these things. We could look at them and we could say, like, this is fucking bonkers. We're willing to let grassroots music die as a result of it, and just kind of remember these are political decisions. Yeah. But yeah, in that kind of research that the Music Venue Trust has been doing, we're really seeing that most venues who are kind of on the edge right now, and it kind of even makes a big difference. Like if they were to announce something, it kind of has to happen now. The 3 months from the beginning of lockdown, as it's coming to an end, you know, everyone's grant that they were given is running out. All these bills are going to start kicking in over the next month or two, with, you know, the furloughs being tapered off, etc., etc. So yeah, I feel like it's just more important than ever that everyone kind of shouts to their MPs, shouts to Oliver Dowden, the Culture Secretary, to Rishi Sunak, and just make it known that unless they act quickly, then theatres, music venues, the whole cultural sector is going to die. And we know, because we've seen it for the last 20 years, that once these venues go, it's really difficult to start one up again, you know, because you've got to deal with transforming a building, transforming a space, getting it soundproofed against neighbours and noise complaints. It's really hard to do. And they could save it now for a fraction of the tax that the industry generates. So we've got to just remember that it's political decisions that are making this. And when it comes around to elections, we need to remember that, you know.
Don't we just, Thinking about your venue in particular, how can people support the venue? And you've got merch and things like that, but how else can they support?
Yeah, I think, you know, merch is a really big part of what could be done at the moment. And then obviously as we come out of this and it becomes safe to go to venues again, then people to do so. Personally, I'm actually really interested in hearing more ideas about how we can diversify use of our venue. So if you've got like an event that you want to do that's kind of a bit out of the box compared to what we usually do, just get in touch, tell us about it. You know, and if we can do it safely, then let's do it, you know. But certainly what everyone can do like right now is write to your MP, write to Oliver Dowden, write to Rishi Sunak, and tell them that, you know, the arts will die if they don't save it. Because it is as simple as that. We need to start being really frank about the situation that we're in. The only people in control of why the you know, Germany has got like 150 million euro rescue package and we have nothing is the government that we've elected in, you know. So let's just hold them to task over it. I do think as well, actually, while we're on the subject, like I mentioned earlier, that prior to the coronavirus we'd been setting up a York music venue network, and that's been really good in terms of getting people who around together around a table in a room who weren't necessarily working together or weren't necessarily thinking together as a joined up sector. Now I know a little bit of that happens in Leeds. I think it really, what we really need to do is just try and emphasize that how as local creative economies we can support each other more. Reach out to your local venues, your local artists, your local studios, and try and like map out your local infrastructure a bit and see what you can do for each other. Because once you're united and you turn around to the council, you know, we managed to get York Council to pass a vote unanimously saying that they wanted to protect York's music venues, and that they actually listed a whole load of things that they were going to do in order to achieve that. At the time, you know, we might have been saying, well, you know, they're paying a bit of lip service here, but you know what? It means that we can hold them to account now.
Yeah,
we can say, you passed a motion saying this. If you let this development of flats happen next door to a venue, you're going against what you've said. You've got to instruct your planning department to do this. You've got to instruct your culture department to do that. And it's been really useful in terms of like local advocacy. So kind of national advocacy and local advocacy working hand in hand. That's what's needed. And anyone can get involved in that.
I feel like you've said a lot of time, like critical points. So
and there's no time like the present, eh?
That's it. So you've got lots of very interesting things to say, so I'm excited to put this one out. It's gonna be good.
Oh, it's good. Thanks for having me. Thanks for listening. You know,
no worries. You've
interested in what's going on, the better, because it's the only way we're gonna get people aware about the situation and try and change it.
Thank you very much for speaking.
Pleasure. No, it's been a nice day to round off my day. I'm going to go enjoy a beer.
Oh, I'm going to go get an ice cream, so enjoy that.